Uncle Doug.
What?
Yeah. So look, I'm in need of truth. I'm in need of answers, and there's only one place I know to go to get those.
The Santa Biblia.
That is Genesis, where the answers are, and then the truth is there too, but it's also in all the rest of them. So, Dan, do you have truth? Do you have answers?
Oh my gosh! Listen, on our Zoom chat, one of our lovely listeners said that she really appreciated our Bible explorations. So, for today's show, as is so often the case with me, I spent the sort of token atheist friend of all of my friends, spent all of my time this week reading the Bible. And after a short search, I landed on a story that I have never heard of, and one that I was pretty worried wasn't actually a Bible story at all, but actually a standout piece of Return of the Jedi occult Ewok fanfic. As it turns out, this is a very real Bible story, despite being widely referred to as the Witch of Endor.
What?
Yeah.
Okay.
Don't know it.
I had that response too. As is so often the case, I found it on a site listing good Bible stories, and holy shit, people, do these people even read these stories before they post them? And also, holy shit, Bible, what the fuck are you even talking about? But anyway, there we are. We'll just launch in. So for this story, we open on Saul. Now, the story of Saul is a strange one, so buckle in.
Yeah.
Saul was nothing. He was a backwoods country doofus. He lived in the shittiest town and came from the lamest family. And that's not me saying that. That's him saying that. Here's his own quote. "But am I not a Benjamite from the smallest tribe of Israel? And is not my clan the least of all the clans of the tribe of Benjamin?" So, not much going for him.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, when the Bible introduces us to him, the only good thing it has to say about Saul is that he was the best-looking guy in all of Israel and a full head taller than anybody else, too.
Oh.
So,
Well, I thought Benjamite was that weird pasty shit that Kiwis put on their toast.
it is. It's delicious.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
If you just like salted toast for no apparent reason.
Yeah.
No, he's I'm picturing like Adam Driver, or he's a little weird looking. Let's cast Ashton Kutcher. That feels about right.
Sure.
Okay.
Anyway,
He hasn't had work in a while.
I was about to say it's the first job he's had in a couple of years.
yeah, I figured let's throw him a bone.
Yeah.
So one day, Saul's dad, Kish, lost a whole mess of donkeys. I love that that's how this story launches. As I'm sure you can imagine, this was very stressful to the whole family. So Kish told Saul to take one of the servants and go find the donkeys. So off they went. They went from town to town on the great donkey hunt, which, boy, it sounds like a real adventure, actually. "Hello," he would say to a random townsperson of Zuph. "I am Saul the Benjamite. Have you seen a mess of donkeys roaming around? No? Okay, on we go to the hill country of Ephraim. Thanks." It's a real page-turner, this Bible.
Yeah.
Anyway, just when Saul was ready to give up, his servant, presumably played by the guy who acted opposite him in Dude, Where's My Car? Stifler. You know Stifler?
Yeah.
Anyway,
nobody
he said,
knows his real name.
Nobody knows that guy's name.
Yeah.
Anyway, he said, "Well, we're right near the town that has that awesome seer who talks to God and predicts everything correctly and is super magic and stuff. Maybe you should go talk to him about your donkeys." But Saul was like, "Crap, we don't have anything to give him. You know how prophets are basically just like psychics and you have to pay them to help you? Well, I don't have anything to pay him." But Stifler was all, "Dude, I got a quarter of a shekel of silver." And Saul was like, "Is that a lot?" And Stifler was like, "I don't know." And Uncle Dan was like, "I don't want to go down a how much was a quarter of a shekel of silver worth in Saul's time rabbit hole. So we'll just assume it was enough." So they went to the town to see the prophet. And that prophet was Samuel. And when they found him, he took one look at that tall Benjamite drink of water and said, "Hey, We're about to have a big sacrifice party, and I want you guys to be the guests of honor. And I won't take no for an answer. And he grabbed Saul by his muscular, donkey-tending hands and dragged him to the party. And Saul sat at the best seat at the... and they sat Saul at the best seat at the table right next to him. And they laughed and laughed about all of Saul's delightful donkey stories. And Samuel was like, oh, don't you worry your pretty little head about those donkeys. They're just fine. And then Samuel signaled to the servant who brought Saul the best piece of meat at the whole dinner. And he said, I was saving this meat just for you. And then he took Saul back to his place, and they had a fun little sleepover on the roof. And they talked and talked for hours on end. And then in the morning, they went for a walk.
Okay, hold on. I'm very confused about a Bible story.
I'm having fun here. What?
Based on people being nice. I'm just completely confused by this.
Well,
Don't worry.
I'm sorry. I'm just trying to picture the kitchen, this bustling kitchen of this banquet, and there's a piece of meat on a plate with a sign that says "Don't touch." Best cut of meat.
What's really funny is that it says, I saved this for you, which makes it sound like it is long since either well overcooked or completely cold. But there you go. He saved him meat. I think that's fancy.
Then they had a slumber party.
Yeah. Then they had a slumber party on the roof, which was super fun. And then in the morning, they went for a walk, and Samuel told Saul's servant to go on ahead, and they'd catch up, if you know what I mean.
Okay, if this story does not end up with mimosas at brunch, I don't believe a word of it.
You hold your horses. Hold your donkeys. And Samuel got a super serious look on his face, and he walked slowly towards Saul, and he said, You're a very special guy, Saul. I'll bet you didn't even know that. You've got big things ahead of you if you just do what I tell you to do. Just trust me, and everything will work out fine. And he pulled out a flask of olive oil and slowly poured it all over Saul, and ever so tenderly kissed him, and anointed Saul the first king to rule over all the tribes of Israel and Judah.
What?
And by the way, I'm not making up any of those details, including the kiss.
I mean,
what is happening?
Well, I mean, it was a tougher time. The only lube available was olive oil. You know,
right? Exactly. I may have flavored it some, but all of the details are real. Then Samuel sent Saul on a very strange scavenger hunt, and literally go find the prophets that are led by a band, and it was just a very strange thing. And then a while later, Samuel gathered all the tribes of Israel. And they all rolled two 20-sided dice to see who would become the king, and then they rolled to see what clan in the tribe would win, and what family in the clan, and eventually, magically, Saul was chosen. And since nobody could argue with dice rolling as the best way to choose your first king ever, and since Saul was so tall and handsome, everybody was pretty stoked.
Wow, things have really turned around for him.
Yeah. It starts out real good.
Yeah.
Dan, how much cocaine did you do before we started recording?
Look, talk to the guys who wrote this story. I am just the messenger. Basically, for several chapters in 1 Samuel, Saul is king, everybody's stoked, and Samuel was prophet. And everything was going pretty okay. But there's a dark underbelly to this story. You see, Samuel did not want Israel to have a king. He was very happy with the former system of God's prophets being the de facto rulers, and had tried to set it up so that his shitty sons would be the next judges over Israel. But the people super duper wanted a king. They wanted to feel like a real boy. So God told Samuel to give them a king, but tell them that they'd regret it, which seems like really shitty advice from God. But this is Old Testament, so Yahweh was still kind of an adolescent deity at that point.
Yeah.
Well, Samuel held this grudge for a long time. He and God were always talking behind Saul's back and saying stuff like, they'll see. One day Saul's going to fuck up, and then they'll all be sorry. Saul didn't know about this, of course, and it's not like he went out campaigning to be king or anything, so he hadn't really done anything wrong. Hell, Saul thought Samuel was his good friend, but God and Samuel were just waiting for their moment to get him. Because if there's one thing that we know from the Bible, it's that teenage mean girls have nothing on the pettiness and fucked up evil of the biblical God and his buddies.
Right. True. True.
So.
The original Heathers.
Totally.
Yeah.
So Saul ruled for a long time, 42 years to be exact, according to the Bible, although according to like any historian, it was probably a lot less than that. Anyway, he fathered some sons, among them Jonathan, who we learned about in episode 32.
Mm-hmm.
He was the guy who had a very loving relationship with a handsome young devil named David.
Yeah, they were gay lovers.
Mm-hmm.
There's just no other way to interpret that story.
And Saul was the mean dad that denied their love.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Connecting pieces. We're just connecting pieces here.
Yeah.
Anyway, Saul has gotten into a bunch of dust-ups with neighboring tribes, the most memorable of which, and a big turning point in his relationship with Mean Girl God, comes in 1 Samuel 15. I talked about this one when discussing the immutable nature of God in episode 133. God orders Saul to attack the Amalekites and tells him expressly to kill every man, woman, child, infant, and all the cattle, sheep, camels, and donkeys.
Yeah, he's a loving God, and he's good all the time.
Let's just save some time and call that General Order 1.
Yeah, exactly. But if you'll recall, Saul killed all but one of the people, sparing the king, and he kept some of the livestock because, well, that's just crazy. Just fucking let the livestock, keep the livestock.
What a waste. What are you thinking? Come on.
Right. And that's when God and Samuel decided that they really hated Saul and they were going to fuck him up. And also, it's when God started saying that he regretted having ever made Saul king, which, about that whole omniscient thing, are you allowed to have regrets? What the fuck are you talking about?
Yeah.
Anyway, after that shit got bad. There was this whole thing where Samuel made sure that Saul knew that his kids weren't going to get to be kings, and some other guy, David, was going to get to be king soon, and that drove Saul nuts. Anyway, Samuel kept pretending to be Saul's friend, but then working against him with God behind his back. Finally, we come to the part of the story where the Philistines were coming for the Israelites, and they had Saul totally outmatched. And what is a Philistine, Uncle Mark?
That's a bad, dirty person.
That's correct.
Yes.
David had fled to Philistine territory, and this is the craziest thing. David,
by the way, sorry, if you don't know where that's from, you have to watch the movie Dead Man. It's hilarious with Iggy Pop and Drag reading a Bible story, just like Uncle Dan is here to Billy Bob Thornton. Don't miss it.
There you go.
Yeah.
Anyway, David had fled to Philistine territory. This part of the David story, someday I'm going to have to get deeper into David because that's his whole story is
a nightmare.
Insane.
Yeah.
Anyway, he had gone to Philistine territory because he had had a falling out with Saul. And because, he was fucking his kid, and so he ran away.
Didn't Saul try to kill him?
Well, yeah. I think Saul was going to try and kill him, and he ran away with like 600 of his men, and he went to Philistine territory and became quite successful, leading raiding parties to other towns and completely slaughtering every living person there and taking their stuff. So the Philistines liked him a lot, and he was on their side now apparently, and they were coming for Saul. So Samuel, the prophet, had died by this point. We don't find that out until suddenly it's like Samuel, who was dead. It was a very strange thing. Anyway, Saul was worried, and he prayed to God, and he asked his prophets to pray, and he did everything he could to try and get any kind of connection going with God, including using the Urim and Thummim. So there you go. Because he was desperate for advice from God, who had ordained him to be the king, but God was totally giving him the silent treatment. So
God was holy ghosting him.
Boom! I like it. I like that one. Anyway, Yeah, he was literally just not talking to him. So forget about all of those scriptures that say if you ask earnestly, God will talk to you, because that's not true.
Yeah.
Right, exactly. So Saul got totally desperate, and he was so sad that his buddy Samuel wasn't there, because God always talked to that guy. So what did Saul do? He went to a medium, a witch, a necromancer. Now, he himself, as king, had banished all of those people and banned those practices completely, so this was tricky. But Saul really needed to talk to Samuel, so he asked around and found that there was a woman on the forest moon of Endor. Sorry, it appears Endor was just a town, who was apparently a really solid dead person talker. So Saul disguised himself and took 2 guys, and they went to see her. Saul told her to call forth a spirit. But like the spirit that I tell you to call forth, not just like any spirit. And the witch was like, King Saul said that this is illegal. You're trying to trick me. This is entrapment. Only in my mind, she said it in 100% funnier and sassier voice than that. And she was played by a young Whoopi Goldberg reprising her role from Ghost. But I don't feel comfortable doing that voice, because white people should probably avoid doing impressions of other races, so we'll just move on.
I love the idea of her saying, if you're the king, you have to tell me. It's entrapment if you don't.
Basically, that's exactly what she said. So Saul swore by God that she wouldn't get in trouble, so she agreed, and she asked who he wanted her to conjure up. And Saul said, Samuel. And Whoopi said, see, I knew you were trying to trick me. You're Saul. But before I could get myself in trouble for doing the voice, Samuel appeared to her.
Oh.
So Saul was like, don't be afraid. Just tell me what he looks like so that I know that it's really Samuel. And Whoopi said, it's an old man wearing a robe. And Saul was like, oh, that's totally him.
Oh my God, that's my card.
And Whoopi was like, these rich folks are way too easy. And she started whatever the ancient Israelite version of Goop was. Anyway, it
was called Spikenard.
.com. Anyway, it turns out that it actually was Samuel, and he was grumpy about the whole thing. He said, and this is a direct quote from the Bible, from multiple versions of the Bible, quote, why have you disturbed me by bringing me up? Which I think is a bitchy thing to say when someone has worked that hard to get to you.
Yeah.
And Saul was like, I'm really worried about the Philistines attacking, and I don't know what to do, and God won't talk to me or any of my prophets. And Samuel was like, look, if God isn't talking to you, then why would you think I'm going to talk to you? She's like the leader of the whole group. And you had your chance with her, Jenny. You blew it, okay? Like, she told you to kill all the Amalekites, and you fucked up. And so now you have to face the Philistines, and guess what? They're going to win. They're going to kick your asses, and you're going to die, and all your sons are going to die, so shut up and fuck you. And then Samuel disappeared, and the seance was over. And
Saul, the whole time Samuel did that, he was texting, by the way.
Exactly.
Yeah.
100%. So Saul, at that point, fell to the ground, half because he was terrified and half because he was just so hurt that his friend had been so mean to him. Oh, and also half because he hadn't eaten anything that day. So the witch shook her head and said, look, you sit over on the couch and take a minute. I'll make you something to eat. And Saul tried to say no, but she wasn't having it, and she went and killed a fatted calf that she had just lying around the house.
She didn't kill a fatted Ewok.
Right, exactly. And she baked him some bread, which all feels like a really long time to make
That's
so hungry he's fainting guy wait.
Starting, yeah. If somebody's got low blood sugar, that would be me. The slaughter and baking probably are going to not really hit the deadline.
Do you have any nuts or anything?
I'll be right back with a snack. I've got to run out to the abattoir and the mill.
Yeah, 100% that's what happened. Anyway, the next day, the Philistines attacked, and Saul and his boys were killed, and somehow every explication of this story that I could find says that the witch was the bad guy. The end.
What?
Okay.
How?
That's basically it. What?
She not only did what they asked, exactly as he asked, she actually made him a fucking meal.
And it worked. The thing that she did worked.
And she's the bad guy.
Well,
I read one explication of it by a pastor who was like, was it really Samuel that she called up? Of course not, because that would mean that necromancy is real. And I was so I went back and reread it, and it's very clear that, yes, it was 100% Samuel. The Bible keeps saying, and Samuel said, blank. But there you go. These guys, they're real good at not reading the actual stories.
Well, and I think one thing is it can be oft repeated. It's never a good idea to be a woman in the Bible.
No, try to avoid it. Honestly, listeners, don't do that. Don't be that person. Because you're going to get blamed.
Put that on the top of your action items list.
You're going to get blamed, but not until after you make the meal.
Right, exactly. You're going to do all the nice things, and then you're in trouble.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that wonderful story, that non-canonical Star Wars fanfic. I loved it.
Yeah, it's one of those things where I'm glad that we all now have that moral grounding to keep us going.
Yeah, absolutely. So,
great.
All right. Well, now I'm hungry.
All right, then let's move on.
Let's find a woman to blame.
Off to the mill.